Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk in Scotland, capital of the world, capital of everything, pretty much. I hope everybody is doing well and has had a great first half of their week so far. It's been all right for me. I am slowly recovering from cellulitis. It's taking a little bit of extra time for it to actually obey its eviction notice that was served to it last week. But we're getting there. I am definitely a bit more mobile, and I can certainly weight bear, which is a good thing, at least for short periods. So I still have my walking stick at the back there, which I'm using to get about, but I'm needing to use it less and less, which is good. And the medication is definitely doing its job. Maybe even slightly too well in some respects, but yeah. So making good progress, and definitely feeling a lot less tired and drained, like I have been lately, with all the things that have been going on. With my dad's death in January and my father-in-law's death in this month, just a week or so ago, and so there's been a lot going on, including cellulitis and all of that, and it's no fun. So I have been told by the doctor to take things easy. Or should I say easier than I would normally do, because my blood pressure is actually quite high, unsurprisingly, when you consider all that I've been going through and the fact that I'm fighting off a major infection as well. It's no surprising, really. But anyway, there you go, little health update. I don't do these all the time, and, you know, as soon as cellulitis is all done, dusted, and gone, we will go back to just the way I would have liked to have started 2026, which is not having to make health announcements and all of that stuff. So yes, so basically the way is clear, the schedule is clear. We should be doing Wednesdays and Sundays shows here on out, pretty much for the rest of the year. There will be a couple of exceptions. One is going to be in April, the weekend of April 12th, that kind of weekend. There will be no Sunday Night Live because I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be down in England for my dad's memorial concert, which I'm looking forward to. I'm going to be coming out of retirement to perform at that concert. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be good fun, and it'll be a good way to give, to give my dad a real proper send off amongst the community of musicians, and that he was a major part of down in the northwest of England. So that's what we're going to do. Me and my wife and maybe the kids. Not sure. Kids might not go, but certainly that weekend there won't be a Sunday Night Live. It is also our 19th wedding anniversary that weekend as well. So we're going to possibly the most beautiful part of England, and I'm saying that with lots of sarcasm, place in Cheshire, in the county of Cheshire, is where we're going to be going. And it's a bit of a dump, to be honest. But it's where my dad lived, and it's where he spent most of his entire life. So that's why we're going down there, because that was his community, and he was a major player in the music scene in Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, all of that area. So they're going to be folks coming from all around that part of the UK, but there'll also be people flying in from the United States as well, and South Africa, and a few other parts of the world, maybe even Australia, hopefully, if we can swing it. There's a drummer that played with my dad back in the 60s when he was playing with Sandy Shaw, and hopefully he will be able to make it as well, and that will be something else, because he is a major, big international drummer. So that would be cool. All right, so let's get to the show. Billy Morgan is the first in the door. Yes, I set this show up rather late because I suddenly realized, oh crap, it's 11 o'clock and the clocks in the United States still... sorry, your clocks are gone. Our clocks haven't changed yet. And I forgot that that doesn't happen until Sunday. So Sunday night will be the last of, from the UK perspective, the early shows. I should just get that in first before we start. So yes, it will be 6 p.m. Central Time as usual. The only place that changes is me. Is twice a year, whenever the clocks go forward or go back, I always move my show back an hour from the UK perspective and the Europe perspective. Doesn't change for you guys in the United States. It's always 6 p.m. Central. But I do that for that reason, because there is a period twice a year for 2 weeks each time it happens, when the clocks go forward and when the clocks go back, when the UK and the US are 1 hour closer to each other for 2 weeks, and then it goes back to normal. That's one of the beauties about living on a globe, and why the Earth is definitely not flat, because time zones exist. So, because of that, Sunday night show will be the last of my 11 p.m. UK shows. It goes back to midnight from next Wednesday. So if you're in the UK or you are in Europe, please bear that in mind. If you're in the US, don't do a thing. Just make sure that your alarm is set for 6 p.m. Central Time, and you won't miss the show. So yes, Billy was the first in the door, followed by Tony Stringer and Peter Batar. Hello, Peter. Good to see you. I think it's Batar. I could be wrong. You're gonna have to spell it phonetically to make sure that I'm pronouncing that correctly. And then we got Stephen from the SRW Experience. We've got Zazu Matt. We've got Dwayne. We got Don Oliver. We got Just Bob, and we got Mr. Beats. Hello, Mr. Beats. And we got Brett Marla here as well, who is not rehearsing tonight, so he can actively participate. Awesome. Brett, get some questions in here. And that's about it's Batter. Okay, there we go. Pronounce Batter. Okay, I'll take that. Peter Batter. Okay, I'll try and remember that. Let's see. Just Bob says, how do you take wordy lyrics that sound more like you're talking and refine them into engaging lyrics that captivate or perk the listener's ear? Great question. And I have two. Is it two or is it more than two? Hang on. No, it's going to be two. I have two really good examples for you. One is, actually, no, it is going to be three. It is going to be three. So the first example I'm going to cite is Call Me Al by Paul Simon. Listen to those lyrics and listen to how Paul delivers them. It's almost like they are not in rhythm. Believe me, if you are the guy that is tasked with having to basically write this all out for the Paul Simon songbook, so that people have got the melody and the chord charts and everything else so that they can play the songs at home, which is still a thing, amazingly. And I'm very glad that it is, because, there's lots of great songbooks out there. Some of them have got lots of wrong chords in them, but some of them are really, really good. But imagine if you are that guy and you have to transcribe Call Me Al and you have to get that melody kind of right. It's difficult because the rhythms are right across the meter. It's like they are not metrical. And I think that is by design by Paul. However, listen closely, because, and I'm talking about the verses, I'm not really talking about the chorus, because the chorus is very definitely metrical, and that's by design. That's kind of a contrast between the verses and the choruses, right? So, with the verses, If you listen closely, although it does sound like he's singing right across the beat and right over the bar line, almost irrespective of the pulse or the bar line, listen to where the phrases end. And I'm talking about the lyrical phrases end, where the rhymes are, because those are right on a strong beat. Right? They are on a downbeat. So they're either on beat 1 or they are on beat 3. Sometimes he will land on a weak beat in 4/4, so that would be either beat 2 or beat 4. But most of the time it's either on beat 1 or it's on beat 3. So the secret to that is basically, if you imagine your melody to be like an elastic band, and you stretch it and you stretch it and you stretch it, and then you let go and you snap it so it's snapped back into time. So this is not something you can quantize, and you shouldn't quantize it. But what you need to do is have like a target note or a target beat. And then what you do is you imagine that the music is a crest of a wave, and you are surfing the crest of the wave, right? Like you would if you were a really good world championship surfer. You'd be riding that wave until you can't ride it anymore. And that's what you do. And the secret to really being a really good surfer, I have heard from friends of mine who are surfers, is to be able to keep going on that wave for as long as possible. And so that's kind of what you do. If you want to write lyrics and write melody in that style, that Paul Simon style. Another good songwriter in a similar vein is Joni Mitchell. If you listen to anything from the Hajira record, you'll see that there's lots of that similar kind of thing going on, where she packs in a lot of words into a line or into a phrase. And the idea is that she is singing not out of time, she's always in time, but she stretches the rhythmic, the metric aspect of the rhythm to almost breaking point, like Paul Simon does. And I think the reason for this being is that Paul Simon was very, very influenced by both English and Irish folk songs. And Joni Mitchell was very, very influenced by English folk songs as well, where this is definitely a way of conveying your song, is that there's a lot of notes, there's a lot of lyrics, there's a lot of words in each of the lines, and then you snap to that, that final downbeat of the fourth measure, or the beat 3 of the fourth measure of each phrase, and that's kind of how you make it work. It's an advanced, I would say fairly advanced songwriting technique. It's not for the faint-hearted, but if it is something you want to try, then go for it. Give it a go. Give it a try. See if you can do it. A lot of people, when they first try it, they are too wed to the pulse. They are too tied to the pulse. And what you have to do is you have to learn how to break free from that rigidity that is the pulse, and allow the pulse actually to propel you musically as you go. There's lots of great jazz singers who do this kind of style of phrasing a lot. Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, Billie Holiday was an exemplar of this kind of phrasing. You'll find it in the way she sings, particularly God Bless the Child. Now, the thing with God Bless the Child is it does stick to clear bar lines, but that's on the recording. When you hear her sing it live at Carnegie Hall with Thelonious Monk on piano, Ray Brown on bass, Buddy Rich on drums, and Charlie Parker on alto saxophone, it is a thing of beauty what she does. And then Charlie Parker takes the melody, uses the melody as a catalyst for improvisation. And Bird was one of these people. This is why they called him Bird, because he was like a bird in flight. He would fly over the top of the music. And he had this incredible ability to nail his phrasing and land on the one. Even if he was playing double or triple or quadruple time, like twice as fast or 4 times as fast as everybody else, he would always land on the one. So you have to basically have such a strong sense of where the one is and where the pulse is that you can set yourself free from it and use it as like a peg for your rubber band. And your rubber band is the phrase, right? So it is definitely a challenging technique. Some really, really great singers don't quite master it, or Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra was not really one to employ that kind of loose phrasing, particularly. Dean Martin, he would do it. Not necessarily so Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra liked to kind of be quite wed to where the pulse is. And that's probably because he sang with big bands a lot. And big bands in the 30s and early 40s, it was all about dancing. It was about dance music and swing rather than art music, which is what bebop and beyond became, really. But Frank Sinatra came up in the swing era where everything was quite tight to the pulse. But that is a really, really great question. Mel Torme is another very, very fine example of someone who always lands on the one. And I suspect that some of Mel Torme's vocal prowess comes from the fact that he's also an extremely good drummer in his own right. And he was also a very, very great friend of Buddy Rich's. They got on famously. So yes, so I'm going to say Paul Simon, Joni Mitchell. Those are my 2 outstanding examples. I'm going to give one more. And that example is going to be, it's a Steely Dan song. And it's probably one of their greatest hits. It's probably one of the songs that did the best out of most of them. And that's Reeling in the Years. Listen to the verses. The chorus is very, very clearly on the beat, but the verses are not. They're kind of in that Joni Mitchell, Paul Simon kind of style, where they are, there's a lot of notes crammed in there, but it really, really works, and it juxtaposes the keyboard part very, very nicely. By the way, trying to play that keyboard part and sing at the same time is incredibly hard. I'm not going to say it's impossible, because it's not. There's, when it comes to music, there's very little that's actually impossible, but that is incredibly hard. I can't do it. Not the piano part that is on the record, I can't do that and sing the verses. It just doesn't work. So what I do is what Donald now does with the contemporary Steely Dan band, which is where he just plays kind of block chords that are offset by an 8th note. And that really works for him, and that really works for me. But I can't do what the piano part on the record for Reeling in the Years is. It's so hard. Sounded a bit like the Spanish Inquisition there. Don't know what the heck you're talking about. I really don't. Oh, great. Mr. Beat says, you having all that going on and still managing to hit the stream button is GOAT status. Salute to you. Thank you for what you do. That's very kind of you to say so, Mr. Beats. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. And actually, you have no idea how much remarks like that actually really, really help me. For me, doing this show is, it's kind of a little bit like a break from the norm. Now, I have taken several weeks off prior to this month, and some of that is because I have just I've just not been able to I've just not had any energy to do anything. So, and my leg has been so painful, and grief has been a real uphill battle. It still is an uphill battle. But yeah, in the early stages in January and in February, and certainly around the time of my dad's funeral, it was a real uphill battle, and my leg was so excruciatingly painful. It was taking all of my energy just to kind of control how much my leg hurt and how much my heart hurt. That I had to not do shows. But I'm glad that I'm back, and I'm glad that I'm doing shows again. And I'm feeling some of that old energy coming back, which is good. But yeah, grief is just, there's nothing that really explains it. I don't think there's anything that really explains how it works. I mean, there's been lots of, psychological books and neurological books written on the subject. There's been lots of people with PhDs and other letters after their names that have written books on the subject of grief. But, when you are actually in it, you have no idea how you are going to respond to it. And I certainly didn't. My dad and I were separated for a large chunk of my life, from the age of about 5 years old until 1998 or so. Certainly, middle 90s, I would say. He and I were estranged. We didn't really talk. We didn't really see each other very much, if at all. And, we reconnected. We kind of started trying to reestablish some kind of relationship. But man, I was completely, even though I was there for 3 days by his bedside, whilst he was fighting for life, and in the end, kind of like the fight had gone, and it was a case of we were just waiting for the end to come, and being at his bedside during those 3 days, even seeing him in the way he was, I was still not really prepared for how him actually dying was going to affect me. And it did. It hit me like a freight train. In fact, it hit me like a queue of freight trains. So doing these streams, in doing these shows twice a week, for me at the moment, in some respects, is actually a break from everything else. And I don't care if there's only 5 people here. At least I get to talk to somebody. I get to talk to you guys. And somebody will watch this after the fact, so it doesn't matter whether there's only 5 people or 55 people here. The fact that anybody shows up is a great thing, and it makes this whole thing worthwhile. And I'm going to teach because teaching is my blood. I'm going to answer your questions because I like to help. And that's what my channel is all about, fundamentally. So, that's not going to stop. That's not going to end. And for as long as I can, and as long as it is possible to do these shows on YouTube, I will continue to do them on YouTube. Now, I imagine at some point in the future, something will come along to replace YouTube. At some point. And whatever that platform is, I will move over to it. And I'll try and preserve an archive, of all of my past videos where I can. But, I will eventually move over to whatever that platform is, I started actually making videos on Vimeo way back in the day when Vimeo was free. We're talking like 2010, 2011. And as soon as Vimeo stopped being a free platform, because I think Vimeo got bought by somebody, I don't know who, I moved away from it and I moved over to YouTube, and I've been here ever since. So yeah, thank you, Mr. Beats. I appreciate all of that. Golden Nighthawk is here. Old school funk and soul. down in the Midlands in England is here. Thank you very much for coming, you guys. I appreciate it. Brett Marley says, on a serious note, wouldn't looking for similes or single words that take the place of several words go a long way in achieving the same result? In some respects, yes. Similes and pun and other literary devices are great for getting across your message and getting across what you want to say, especially as in a lot of cases what we want to do as songwriters is we want to tell a story or we want to convey a message, but because of the constraints of how music works, we need to do that with as few words as we can. Now you can really stretch that concept and shrink it down to what I call minimalist storytelling. I think the technical term is fracture storytelling. And this is where instead of telling the whole story, you tell it in fragments that maybe, each line is a couple of words long. It's not even a whole sentence. It's just a couple of words. So you imagine, for example, you are eyewitness to something that happens that's spectacular. Maybe like a spectacular road traffic accident or an historical event like the Berlin Wall coming down. And the first person you want to talk to is the person standing next to you, and you want to tell them all about it, but it's like it's just pouring out of you. And so that's what we call fractured storytelling, where you're basically just telling the essence of the story, like little flashcard images of what the story actually is. And by doing that, the brain is very clever. It fills in all the rest of the information. And so, when you've got little fragments of a sentence, of a story, you can put the whole thing together. Your brain fills in the gaps. It's a very, very good way of conveying a song. So pun, simile, innuendo, and I don't mean sexual innuendo. I mean innuendo as in, reverse meanings, backwards meanings, upside down meanings, those kind of things are, I mean, you could use sexual innuendo if it's genre appropriate, but I wouldn't recommend it. But, those kind of literary devices are what will make your songs go. They will give your songs forward motion. Just Bob says, wordy like it feels like it's meandering, losing focus. Well, that's the thing. That's why if you use that image of the elastic band and your peg, you've got a rhyme or a rhyming couplet that is your target, and you're stretching it out. Dave's absolutely right. Almost like an instrumental soloist, but as a singer. Right. So you're phrasing loosely, not necessarily in rhythm, but it doesn't have to meander, and it doesn't have to lose focus. If you're finding that what you're writing does meander and does lose focus, I agree with Brett here. He says, I would trim out more superficial words and refocus the message. Yes, absolutely. So if you've got lots and lots of words, try and take out things like ands and buts and ifs and things like that. Words that are, they're adjunctives. They are joining words. You don't necessarily need those when you're writing a song. Words like and it and but and all of those kind of words. You don't necessarily need those. So you can strip them out and you can lose them. And you can still convey the same message without them. And that's okay. Now, in a piece of narrative writing, you can't get away with that because it doesn't make sense. But in form of poetry or a song, it does. And it's perfectly permissible. So strip out some of the extraneous words that you don't need, whilst keeping the words that you do need that are essential to conveying the meaning. And then make sure that each of your lines has a target, a clear target where you have a rhyme or a rhyming couplet that is going to provide your punch, your accent to the line, that is going to make sure that the line always has a focus because it's targeted towards this word, and then the next line is targeted to this word that rhymes with that word. Okay? And then by doing that, you keep that forward motion, you keep that momentum without meandering. Let's see. Right, okay, I understand you, Brett, now. Thank you. That's okay, Billy. Don't worry about not advertising the show. That's on me because I only gave you 25 minutes notice. So, Just Bob says, what is your advice for someone who writes music, lyrics, etc., but knows that family or friends don't want their music when expired? How do you convince them to keep writing? I'm not sure I understand that last part of the question. But knows that family or friends don't want their music when expired. What do you mean by expired? Are you talking about death here, or are you talking about something else expiring? I'm not really sure what you mean there. How do you convince them to keep writing? Somebody that maybe doesn't want, maybe they're running out of energy. Maybe they are at end of life. Maybe. I don't know. But, and if that is the case, dying. Okay, yes. So end of life there is right. When they are at end of life, and you want to convince them to keep writing because you think it might be cathartic, maybe something like that. You can try and convince them of the cathartic argument and say, hey, actually, I think writing will help you. Or, just sitting down at the piano will help you. Then, try and make that case. But, having seen my dad was not just a great tenor saxophone player. He was a multi-instrumentalist. He could pretty much pick up anything and play it. He was one of those people. But he was also a really, really terrific arranger. He wrote arrangements for big bands, for small ensembles, for orchestras. He wrote all kinds of charts. But he also had, even though he wouldn't really ever admit to this, he also had a bit of a thing for composing, although he never really exercised that muscle much. There are a couple of tunes that he wrote for a mutual family friend of ours, actually, who I knew growing up. And he was, when I was a kid, he was an up-and-coming hotshot music producer. And my dad basically gave him his big break. And so my dad wrote some arrangements for him and wrote some tunes that he could record. And I played on some of them. And I sang on some of them, but mostly I played drums or percussion on those records. I was really, really young. I was only like 5, maybe 6 years old. And this guy was a hotshot music producer. And he actually is now a hotshot music producer with, gold records and things like that. He's absolutely great. And my dad kind of gave him his big break. But so he wrote a couple of tunes, not much more than that, maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 tunes, that this guy could record. And then he would have something that he could submit, to record labels and try and get himself work as a music producer. And it actually really, really worked. It got him his big break, and now he works with some fairly major label artists now, and he works for, fairly large record companies here in the UK. So it worked. And these tunes were really, really good. But my dad didn't really like composing. It was not really something he enjoyed doing. He would do it if he had to, but he didn't really like doing it. But he was really, really good at it. But I could never really 100% persuade him, look, you just need to keep working at this because you're actually good. But, you know, the one thing he did do, even right up until the very end of his life, was write arrangements. One of the things I found when we went into his house was a bunch of arrangements that were just sat on his desk. He was in the midst of writing some big band arrangements. I think he may have even been commissioned to do these arrangements. Most of them were finished, but there was a couple that weren't finished. I have those in the studio, so I have those charts. They are here, and I have told the person who commissioned the works, that commissioned the arrangements, that he's sadly no longer with us. So the finished arrangements he now has. I have the unfinished ones, and I am going to complete those works, those arrangements, and I will get them to this guy. But yeah, so he was still working on arrangements, and you know, he played his last gig on New Year's Eve, and you know, he collapsed from a heart attack just after midnight on New Year's Eve, and was in hospital for the better part of like 6 or 7 days before he got moved over to palliative care, where he died on January 9th. So yeah, but yeah, somebody that's kind of at end of life, I don't know, it kind of depends on, you know, is that drive there, even if maybe they don't have a lot of physical energy. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Not everybody's going to have a lot of most people, when they are in that end of life, that palliative care phase of life, they're probably not going to have a lot of physical energy. But if the fire is still in the heart and the fire is still in the belly, you have to keep stoking it, fanning it into flame. And there's no real set way to do that. You just have to find a way that's going to work for them. Just Bob says, friend of mine giving up, still has plenty of tears ahead, feels lost. Like, why write and record? Nobody is interested. He wants to set his instrument down. I'm trying to help him. Okay, yeah, I understand that. Yeah, that's really hard to work through. That is really hard to work through. That sounds to me like it's a depression. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. And I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't know for certain, but from what you're describing there, Bob, it does sound like that this is kind of a depression. And the only thing you can do is encourage them. Talk to them about their music. Talk to them about what their music means to you. And, you know, just encourage them and help just breathe life into that passion. It's a tough one, and it's not easy for anybody to deal with. And unfortunately, there's not really a set way to do it. It's you're gonna have to experiment. You're gonna have to try different ways in which you can encourage and motivate and say, look, you're really, really good. You're not just a good musician, you're not just a good player, but you're a good songwriter, you're a good composer, you're a good arranger. And then go into some specifics. Talk about works that mean something to you. But the thing is, it's got to be genuine. You can't fob somebody off when they're in a depressive phase. You can't just fob them off and say, hey, your music is great. I love these songs. These are really, really good. That's not going to cut it. It has to be genuine. So, and you have to have something genuine and something specific to come with to come at them with. Like, I love this specific song because it does this in my heart. Or I love this particular song because the arrangement is so good. The lyrics are really vibrant. The story is fascinating. This song is just so engaging. It really draws me in, and then talk about why it is. And those kind of things can actually start to breathe fresh life into a situation like that, where, they're just kind of like, well, nobody really cares. Nobody really gets it. Nobody understands me. Nobody likes my music. My music's a bit shit and all of that. I think pretty much everybody goes through that, at one time or another. I've been through it a few times myself. I've been in the music business, like I said, since I was about 5 years old. And I'm 50 now, so, coming up on 51. So, pretty much 40 years, thereabouts. I basically stopped playing gigs, and I stopped taking gigs in 2020, when the pandemic kind of got underway. The pandemic actually gave me a great opportunity to actually just reevaluate things. And just think about my career, think about my music, and think about a whole bunch of things, and think about my band and all of that. And you know what? I came to the conclusion, I just don't want to play gigs anymore. I just don't want to. I don't have that drive to play gigs anymore. I've played a lot of gigs in my life, with a lot of different bands, a lot of different artists. With my own bands, several different bands that I've had over the years, and I just decided one day I just don't want to do that anymore. I want to focus on recording. I want to focus on mixing. I want to focus on writing songs and recording them. And, doing recording work for other artists. I don't really, I've been there, I've done that. I've invested a lot of my life in being on the stage. And I just don't want to do that anymore. So for me, it was a gear shift. It wasn't that I thought I'm not a good performer. I'm still a good performer. I know I am. When I get up on the stage, I can be absolutely awesome. I know I can. And I'm not being boastful when I say that. I know I can. But it's just not for me anymore. It's just not something I want to do anymore. I want to work in the studio. Yeah, it's a little bit solitary. But you know what? I don't mind, because for me, I'm still being creative. I'm still working for other people. I'm still doing work for other people. But I don't have to pack all my stuff into cases and, take a bus, or go, wait for the bus, the band's van to turn up, and load all my stuff into the van, go set up, go play the gig, pack all the stuff down at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, load up into the van. By the time then it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and then drive home. We get home, I unload my stuff into the studio here, and it's like 3:30, maybe 4 o'clock in the morning by that point. And then I've got to be up in 3, maybe 4 hours time to make sure that my kids go to school, and then I start my job at Fender at 10 o'clock. So I had done that for all of my life. And so for the last, 6 years, have I missed it? Nope. Not in the slightest. Even when I occasionally come out of retirement for one-off shows, which I've done a couple of times. Yeah, like 3 times in the last 6 years, I've played one-off shows. And by the time I get home at the end of that show, I'm just like, yeah, I'm glad I don't do this anymore. You know, I'm glad I don't do this anymore. But you know what? When I walk through the door of the studio into here in the morning at 9 o'clock, I power everything on and I'm full of life, full of vigor, full of energy, full of excitement, ready to go, ready to do, awesome work for my day job in QA at Fender. And also, in the evenings, that's when I do my session work for other people that want me to play bass or want me to play keyboards or do vocals or, occasionally a little bit of saxophone. But I also do voiceover for commercials as well. And, I enjoy doing all of that. I wouldn't trade that for all the tea in China and India and everywhere else. I just wouldn't. It's great. I love it. I love the work that I do, whether for Fender or for all the other people that I do stuff for. I love it. And, sometimes I do stuff for free for people because I enjoy it so much. I made a good living as a performing musician. I make arguably a better living as a non-performing musician because I work in the studio and I have my fixed rates that I charge. So, it's kind of neat and tidy. And, I finish the sessions at a very specific hour of the night and I power everything down and I go to bed. Bed is just over there. It's like a very short, at this particular point in my life, shuffle away. So, but yeah, the studio environment, I've been in the studio environment for 40 years as well. And the first time the guy I was talking to you about, I'm not naming the guy, but the guy I was talking to you about, the music producer guy, when I went into his studio, that was my first studio experience. 5 years old, going into that studio, seeing the big SSL console. I felt like I was in paradise. It was amazing. Yeah, I was 5 years old and I recorded a few records with this guy as a kid. It was great, and I was immediately hooked on the idea of recording and the idea of mixing. Totally hooked, and I've been hooked ever since, and it's something I love very much. All right, so Brett says, when working solo in your studio, you only have one ego to deal with, which is my own. That's right. Now, the thing is, I don't even have that to deal with because I don't have an ego. It's one thing I have worked very hard to drum out of me is an ego. So I don't even have an ego because I'm, there is an essence to where I do compete with myself. Yes, I do. I do have a competitive edge with myself, which is I want to do better and better work. I want the next thing that I do to be better than the last thing that I did. But I don't have an ego. I don't like that whole thing. I mean, one of the things about performing that pissed me off, quite honestly, is people on the stage, particularly if I'm like in the house band and we're backing a bunch of soloists on a jam session night. And I did this a lot in London. I did this for like 15 years in London. And, yes, I get paid a decent amount of money for being in the house band. I did that, 3 nights a week, being in the house band, backing whomever was there, at the club. But man, the amount of ego that is on the stage, it was nauseating. And I'm not talking about a particular instrumentalist. Like some people go, oh, guitar players, they've got the biggest egos on the planet. Yeah, this was like saxophone players, trumpet players, even accordion players, They all have massive oversized egos. They all think they are God's gift to their particular instrument. And I couldn't stand it. I would just do my job and pack down my gear, pack down my drums as quickly as I could and got out of there. Most of the time I was using a house kit, so that was easy. I just take my cymbals off, chuck them into my cymbal case, pack my snare drum into my snare drum case, put my sticks into my stick bag goes over my shoulder, and out the door I go. And I don't talk to those people. And that was it. You still do shows twice a week, in fact, just different type of performance. I don't count this as a performance. I really don't. This is not a performance, Keith. I see what you're saying, but really, no. This is not a performance. I suppose there is an element to which it is, and I suppose there is an element to which teaching is a performance of one kind or another. And I've done a lot of that. I've taught in high school. I've taught in colleges. I've taught in universities. I still do teach here, obviously, but I still also do some teaching for Edinburgh University as well. I suppose that's a kind of performance, but I guess I have never really considered it such. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is, but I don't really think of it that way. But I guess maybe it is. Maybe it is a kind of performance, and maybe it's just a different type of performance, a different set of performance chops. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you're right. But I haven't ever considered it to be a performance. But I guess it could be seen that way. Brett says, I do miss playing with people in real time. The last 9 months of rehearsing helped me realize that, but dealing with egos is not what I missed. Yeah. Egos, yeah. No. Yeah, it is a thing that you have to deal with in the music business. And my daughter is dealing with it in the sports business as well, with her football. Man, you guys call it soccer. Why you guys call it soccer is a mystery to me. Doesn't make sense. Because the game that you call football really isn't football, because you hardly ever kick it. You throw it and you hold it. Kind of like rugby, but that's a whole nother subject. Don't get me started on that one. But there are egos, particularly in sports, but there are egos in performance arts as well, for sure. Were the house drums mic'd at all? Yes, in pretty much every circumstance that I played, they were mic'd. Sometimes lots of mics. Sometimes really minimal, like a couple of overheads and a kick drum mic. And maybe a snare drum mic. But, sort of minimal liking. And actually, minimal liking is my favorite approach for recording drums. Is what I much prefer. I mean, sometimes when I get like a particular type of song or a particular genre of song to mix, and everything is mic'd. So each tom is mic'd, the snare drum is mic'd, top and bottom, overheads, ride cymbal mic, hi-hat mic, there's like 10, 15 mics on a drum set. And I get all the stems for all of these. You know what I end up doing the most to sculpt the drum sound is it's mostly the overheads and the kick drum mic, and then everything else, all the close mics are blended. They're blended in with the overheads. The vast majority of the drum sound that I much prefer to get when I'm mixing a record is the overheads and the kick drum mic. So if the overheads are perfectly in phase and they're perfectly in the right position to capture the drum set, that's what I'm going to use. Sometimes the overheads aren't particularly, and you can tell they've just been thrown up to be cymbal mics. And if that's the case, then I'm gonna use the close mics a lot more than the overheads. But for the most part, the drum sound I get is with the overheads and not really the close mics. And then if there are room mics, yes, I'll use the room mics as well. I will compress the living daylights out of the room mics, and then I'll parallel compress the living daylights out of those as well, and then blend those in. So, yeah, pretty much every jazz club I have ever played at, the drums have been mic'd, and everything's been mic'd. So horns are mic'd, bass amp, piano, electric piano is DI'd. The piano is mic'd, stereo mic'd. And you know, all the horns are mic'd. And the drums. And the bass amp is mic'd and DI'd, and then that's usually blended in on the front of house as well. So yeah, everything is mic'd. Even a small club like the Jazz Bar in Edinburgh, which is a basement jazz club, you know, the stage is actually pretty small, and the audience are fairly close to the stage. Certainly the front row of the audience are fairly close to the stage. Even then, still mic'd up. Okay, Just Bob finishes with a question for Sunday, and he says, can you do a Sunday show showcasing the project page and detail how to balance several tracks recorded at different volumes to be at the same level for a CD? We can certainly do that. Bob, email me that question, please. So go to jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, contact form, send that email to me, and put the subject as Sunday Night Live. Yeah, we will kick off Sunday's show with that question. Because yes, the project page doesn't really get a lot of a look in, and I think I did a series which I called Studio One from Scratch, where on that series I took you from very first download and install and activation and installing all the content all the way through to how to actually use the program from not knowing anything about it. How to mix your first song, how to master your first song using the project page. But I've not really done much on the project page since. I probably should. You're probably right. I should certainly do that. So we can certainly do that. I do have my songs from my EP, which is now 10 years old. I know. That scared me when I realized that my 2016 EP is not new anymore. It's 10 years old. I need to get my act together, find some time, carve out some time, and start writing some new songs and get them recorded so that I can get another EP out there, so that I can't be embarrassed by the fact that my EP is now 10 years old. So I'm gonna make that something that I do either this year or in 2027, and get that out. So that's something I'm definitely going to do. And I'm going to blame you, Bob, entirely for that. So yeah, email me that question and we'll kick that off. I will grab some of my songs from my EP and we'll whack them into a project, and we will basically master that EP. Or we'll just do we won't have time to master it, but we'll do a rough balance, a rough master. It isn't actually as hard as it sounds to do, but we will do that. All right, we are out of time, fabulous people, but thank you very much for all of your great questions. Some really, really good ones tonight. Thank you. So we'll be back here on Sunday for Sunday Night Live. We will kick off with doing a little bit of mastering in the project page in Studio Pro 8. If you've got any other recording, mixing, mastering questions, or questions about Studio Pro 8 in general, get them into the chat on that show, or as Bobby is already doing right now, you can email me your question, especially if you've got one that's got a bit more detail to it. You can email me. All right, folks, I will see you Sunday. Take care. Have a great rest of your week. Good night.